Hello, my name is Oro, and I have a mullet. Welcome, friends, welcome. I thought I'd celebrate the 1-year anniversary of quarantine by sharing with you the books that kept me going. You know, maybe we can start our very own VIP book club on the interwebs. So if you have suggestions, you can leave them down below. And yeah, without further ado, let's begin. I am missing a few books. Reason being, I left a few behind when I was traveling through Latin America last March. And sometimes I read a book and I just didn't like it, so I left it behind. Or I really liked it and I gave it to a friend I made on the road. Or I exchanged it at a hostel. So I acquired new books, left some behind. Some got lost, just like anything I own. Also, sometimes I go for audiobooks, so there's that. But yeah, I still got a few books to show you folks today. I tried to remember the ones that I had when I was traveling, because there are a few of them that I really, really liked. There was Hippie by Paulo Coelho, really, really good. At least from what I remember, I very much enjoyed it. Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Wasn't a big fan. I know it's a bestseller. I heard a lot of great things about it. That's one of the books that I left behind because I couldn't care for it. I'm sorry. It just didn't do it for me. And then we have a few classics. Bernard Werber, I'm for sure not pronouncing that right. Les Fourmis. Art of War by Sun Tzu. Beyond Good and Evil by Nietzsche. And then there was La volupté des neiges, Vladimir Fedorovski. Really good. Highly recommended. I'll try to find the English title and then put it somewhere here. Yeah, that was really good. If you're into romance, but not like the tacky kind. So that's about it. And there was one audiobook I started listening to, The Body Keeps the Score. And I'm not a big fan of self-help books in general, just because I find a lot of them get very cliche and cheesy, but not a good kind of cheese. But The Body Keeps the Score, I find, has a lot of facts and science to back up those facts, and I like that. I didn't finish it because I got distracted. Now let's begin with the physical books that I own. First up, we have Denis Johnson, Train Dreams. I usually go for nonfiction just because, listen, it's really hard for me to focus for an extended period of time. So if I'm gonna read something, I wanna get something out of it. So I feel like when I read nonfiction, even if the book sucks, I still learn something. But if I read a fiction book and it sucks, I just feel like I've wasted my time. So yeah, I was looking for recommendations of fiction books to read. And this little guy, how can I put this? You know when you watch a movie and it's a good movie, it's entertaining, you're glad you watched it, but if a friend of yours was like, hey, do you want to watch this? And you're like, yeah, I've seen it already, I'll pass. It's that good. Also, for those of you who, like me, English isn't their first language, it's a little hard because it's like an old Western movie, and it took me a while to like warm up to it, and by the time I warmed up to it, I was halfway through the book. So I feel like I kind of missed. Maybe that's why I didn't crush on it that hard, but it was good. Next up, still in fiction, we have David Zukerman's Perdido. I really like that one. It's dark. It's like a thriller, I guess. Really, really good. I only bought it because there was a tag of approval, and no regrets. Next up, we have My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. I am sorry for butchering your name, because I'm sure I didn't say that right. I thought it was very apropos, given that I haven't done much in the past year. I rarely come across a fiction book that I can't put down. This was one of them. It's dark. If you're looking for a tale that's uplifting, this is in the book for you. The story of a young woman who makes terrible life decisions. A little depressing, I'm not gonna lie. Overall, I enjoy it. I like reading dark stuff. I sound so emo right now. What I mean by that is I'm a big fan of dark comedy, things of the sort, and I feel like this kind of falls under that category. If you're looking for a book that's gonna make you feel better about your personal life choices, this might be the one for you. Next up, we have 3 books that I have read several times before, but that's how much I love them. So we have the classic Le Petit Prince. Whenever I travel, I take it with me. It's a guaranteed mood picker-upper, 10 on 10. Next we have Amor, prozac et autres curiosités by Lucía Etxebarría. I am so sorry. Again, it's pretty dark and twisted, but it has humor in it. It talks about a young woman who's going through a hard time and who's experiencing with drugs and other fun things. Also not the best book to read if you're not in a great mood and you're looking for something to cheer you up. I'm starting to sense a theme. 10 on 10. Next we have another classic by Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist. I think most people have read this one. Another great book to take with you when you're traveling. I feel like you can't really go wrong with this one. And this is the kind of self-help book that I can fuck with. It's kind of spiritual, which I like. 10 on 10. Now, I have 2 more self-help books. The Wisdom of Anxiety, Sheryl Paul. Why is it so... I'm just gonna take a picture on the internet and stick it on top of the... How worry and intrusive thoughts are gifts to help you heal. Like I said before, not a big fan of self-help books in general, but what better time to start reading self-help books than now? And I have to say, I wasn't disappointed at all. This was recommended by a good friend of mine, Jess. I tip my hat to you. Next up, we have The Practical Neuroscience of Buddha's Brain, Happiness, Love, and Wisdom by Rick Hanson, PhD. If I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I can't remember fully what I got out of this book because I read it at the beginning of the year, and this is how my memory works. It retains very useless information, and the stuff that I could benefit from is just... I can't really rate this book because I don't remember it. But if I kept it, it's a good sign, because usually if I don't like a book, I just send it on its way. So I'm gonna recommend it just purely based on me trusting my past self. Next up, we have Psilocybin Mushrooms of the World by Andrew Paul. Not what I thought it would be, but that is 100% my fault because I did not read the description when I bought it online. I just saw psilocybin mushrooms and I got excited. I ordered it. Small but comprehensive work on psilocybin mushrooms and everything you need to know about them and how to grow them and care for them and indulge if that's what you want to do. So 10 on 10. Next up we have La Révolution Nutrition, Anxiété, Dépression, Sommeil par Dr. Uma Naidoo. It's kind of a hybrid between a cookbook and a science-based self-help book. There are different chapters on different mental disorders and what kind of food to eat or what kind of food to avoid eating to help. Super interesting. So there's a chapter on anxiety, there's a chapter on depression, there's one on ADHD, like insomnia, fatigue, OCD. It's really, really cool, and there are recipes. So, yeah, anything that talks about food, I'm a big fan. Next up, we have the Autobiography of Malcolm X. I think anyone should read it. It took me a while to read that one. I read it last summer. And, well, it can't take me that long because summer here doesn't last very long. So if you haven't already read it, what are you waiting for? Next, we have Instinct de liberté, anarchisme et socialisme by one of my favorite humans in the whole world. No. Sorry for saying your name like that. I love you. It's very small. It's a small book. When I was called for jury duty, I still can't believe that happened. They told us to bring books to keep us busy. I mean, anything by Noam Chomsky. I'm a little biased because I'm a big fan, but there's a reason why I girl fan so hard on his work. It's great. So do yourself a favor and grab a Noam Chomsky today. And speaking of girl fanning real hard, we have Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I'm again so sorry for mispronouncing your name, probably. Nous sommes tous des féministes. Again, very small book. That's another one that I took with me on jury duty because it fits nicely in my purse and it's so good. Everything she writes is chef's kiss, gorgeous, delicious, wonderful. Partout dans le monde, la question du genre est cruciale. Alors j'aimerais aujourd'hui que nous nous mettions à rêver à un monde différent et à le préparer. Un monde plus équitable. Un monde où les hommes et les femmes seront plus heureux et plus honnêtes envers eux-mêmes. Et voici le point de départ. Nous devons élever nos filles autrement. Nous devons élever nos fils autrement. I can't... Just read it. Next, we have a classic. Why am I so pale? Paul Lafargue, Droit à la paresse. It makes you think about things that are important. And it's beautifully written. Next up, we have another one of my favorites, David Henry Thoreau, Je vivais seul dans les bois, which is, I think, Walden, Life in the Woods. I think that's what it is in English, if I'm not mistaken. Henry David Thoreau, if he was still alive 200 years, 300 years later, I would like to go grab a coffee with him. Didn't seem like the most joyful human being, but hey, you don't have to be. Next, we have 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act by Bob Joseph. I have nothing bad to say about this book. I just finished reading it the other night. It is so good and so fucking frustrating, understandably so. There are a lot of stuff that I had no idea. I've lived in Canada most of my life, and yet there's a lot that I am really pale. Let me just fix this real quick. This hurts my eyes a little bit less. Probably gonna hurt yours less as well. You're welcome. From 1886 to 1996, the 90s. That's not that long ago, so we still have a long way to go. Canada created residential schools, and from what I understand, it was basically a means to take children from Indigenous families and keep them away from them so that they couldn't practice their culture, their traditions, speak the language, and basically assimilate them. It's fucking terrible. The government banned the potlatch, so practitioners went underground to continue to hold ceremonies. The government pushed people into small reserves, but they still were with their families. But when the government took the children from their families, it was unbearable. Like, yeah, no shit. What the fuck? If you thought the US was bad, Canada is not far behind, let me tell you. The Indian Act remains in effect today with basically the same framework it had in 1876, despite the numerous amendments. 1876. Anyway, really good book, information that we all should know by now. I am so fucking pissed that they didn't teach any of us any of this in school, but we learned about Columbus though. How does that make sense? It doesn't, but we can change that, and I think that a good place to start is to get informed. So 10 on 10. Moving on to another great book to get informed, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook by Mark Bray. I haven't finished it. I usually read 2-3 books at the same time. I'll have like one political science or social science or environmental science or philosophy, or like a book that's a bit heavier to read on the side, and then at the same time I'll read one fiction book or poetry or something that's a little lighter, and I bounce back between both. So that's one of the books that I have on the side that I keep going back to. It's pretty heavy, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's not a page turner. You're not gonna sit here and go through the book in a day. But it's very interesting and it is full of things that we should know about. So 10 on 10, read this one as well. It's just gonna be one long video of me telling you to read a bunch of books. There's not one book that I'm like, you shouldn't read this one. Next up, we have Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching. It's the original work that Taoism stems from. I think, don't quote me on this, I think so. But I'm wrong about a lot of things, so it's a lovely little book. Definitely worth the read. Next, we have Cioran, Émile Michel Cioran, Pensée étranglée. I love a lot of the stuff he read. Again, doesn't sound like the most joyful human being, but I feel like it could have been a fun time to go and grab a coffee with this dude. Pretty dark, poetic. It's an interesting, I think he was considered a philosopher amongst other things, but he kind of stands out compared to the other philosophers of those times. I appreciate that because most of them all sound like they're really into themselves. Just to give you an idea of the flavor of this book, Nous sommes tous au fond d'un enfer dont chaque instant est un miracle. Speaking of philosophers that I have a hard time standing, Sigmund Freud, Pour introduire le narcissisme. It's one of his classics. I hadn't read that one, and I don't think I'll read it again. And that is honestly the best way I can think of to describe any book by Freud. Next up, we have the Hedonism Handbook, Mastering the Lost Arts of Leisure and Pleasure by Michael Flucker. I'm a big fan of hedonism. Not a big fan of this book. I think it is oversimplified. I don't know. I read it, tell me what you think. I'm gonna give this one 5 on 10. Sorry, Michael. And then we have erotic poetry, Sugar Blood by Liz Bowen. Poetry in general tend to be a little weird. Erotic poetry definitely tops that. A kenning is a figurative expression of two subjects that give special value to a common word. It is a way to see the word not through its economic function, but through ecstatic vision. Such is the experience of reading Liz Bowen's Sugar Blood. Here, its kennings operate beyond disease and through sexual frenzy. A good way to sum it. I enjoyed it. Would I read it again? Maybe not, but definitely worth it. Next up, still erotica, Venus in Furs by Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. I probably butchered that name as well. I am sorry. It is not a book that aged well, to say the least. You know, sometimes I read as a means to escape reality, sometimes I read to educate myself, and sometimes I read to either reinforce or challenge my current beliefs. Yeah, I don't think that you should agree with everything you read. In fact, I think you should read stuff that you don't particularly agree with. What I'm trying to say is, it's racist. I don't condone it, but it was written in the 1800s, and it shows. If you're interested in erotica, it's a good place to start. Just like the 120 Days of Sodom by Marquise de Sade, or Shad. But yeah, just be aware that it's so not politically correct. Next up, we have the complete poetry of Edgar Allan Poe, another classic, big fan of his work. Alone. From childhood's hour I have not been. As others were, I have not seen. As others saw, I could not bring. My passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken. My sorrow I could not awaken. My heart to joy at the same tone. At all I loved alone. It's pretty good. I like my books just like I like my women, dark and poetic. And finally, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, A New History of Their Lost World by Steve Brusatte. I love dinosaurs so much. And this book definitely... I haven't finished it yet. It's my other go-to part-time book. If you're into dinosaurs, I would strongly recommend it. I'm only halfway through, but I'm already in love. 10 on 10. That's it for today. Those were the books I read this year. Normally I read about I don't know, 2 to 4 books, sometimes 5 per month. That hasn't been the case this year, but that's okay. I've still read a few and I made a few very interesting discoveries. I hope you did as well. If you could please share them in the comments below. I am looking for new books to read now because I don't think we'll be out of quarantine anytime soon.